Well, good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining our weekly webinar. This is Patrick Halstead at Qdabra, and today I'm pleased to introduce Bree Houston, who will be doing the webinar. Bree is the latest addition at Qdabra. She has been with us about 5-6 months now, and Bree, in addition to being a professional ski instructor, Bree is a graphic designer, and she's been working on our eForms solutions for many months now, and I'm really happy that she's doing the webinar this morning. Bree.
Yeah, good morning, everybody. I hope you're having a great morning. Thanks for that introduction, Patrick. And like Patrick said, I'm a graphic designer and been having a great experience here at Qdabra. And this morning, I'd really like to present to you guys another part in our After InfoPath series. So today we're going to be talking about Qdabra's open source FormsViewer solution for SharePoint. And we're pretty excited to present this to everyone this morning. So you may or may not have heard of FormsQuo, but it is our community resource site that we've really developed as an information site for all of our viewers out there who are looking for those different eForm solutions kind of moving to the future. And so I'd kind of like to start with an overview of all of those webinars. So here I have a list. So this is the After InfoPath series webinar list. So I'll let you take a moment to kind of soak it all in. So I've listed the past webinars on the top, and those are all going to be available on our YouTube channel, weekly webinars, and our upcoming webinars. So these are all the different kind of solutions that we're visiting and going into a little bit more detail to give you some scope about what is available for migration paths, different eForm solutions, and how to move forward with your InfoPath and eForms. All right, and this brings us to our FormsQuo site. So this is that home page that you're going to see right when you visit our site. The link is right below as well. And this is going to give you all of that detailed information that I was talking about and some of the things that we discuss in our webinar series After InfoPath. And you'll see I've circled the eForm solution matrix, and that's what I'm going to show you next. So this matrix essentially takes some of the solutions that we've been able to go into a little bit deeper detail and give you some of the details about each one and what we see as the benefits, the potential limitations, cost to migrate, and cost to maintain. And this matrix really views it in a quick and easy way to compare some of those different solutions because, as you know, not all solutions are the same, and it's important to pick a solution that's really going to fit the needs of your business. So I'm going to talk today about our very own Qdabra Forms Viewer, which we're very excited to kind of unveil. We've been working on the solution for quite a few months now. We were kind of expecting the InfoPath announcement to happen back in November, so we were kind of prepped for that and have been continuing to develop this app as a community-based solution for the migration of InfoPath forms. So why is InfoPath cool? Well, there's a lot of reasons why InfoPath is cool. I don't think you would be tuning in this morning if InfoPath didn't mean something to you and your business. But there's really a lot of benefits in using InfoPath today. There's a lot of easy-to-use functions, rules, validation that require no code, and a really great user interface that's easy to customize and make look very beautiful with very little effort. And the documents are easy to deploy no matter which environment, the client base, the browser base, which brings us to kind of that bridge to web services. So there's really a lot of benefits to InfoPath today, kind of like the Roadrunner. He's the cool character from the cartoons. So I kind of like to think of InfoPath as all of these different building blocks that really have these parts that fit together very nicely. They build strong structures that are going to stay together and kind of take whatever information is going to come to them or whatever is added on top of them and be very structurally sound. So I talked earlier a little bit about the need to customize your InfoPath forms because not all InfoPath forms are the same. And this is kind of a short list of some of the different variables and things that we see as types of InfoPath forms that all have different needs. And this is why we're taking a look at all of these different eForm solutions. Just because a solution is great in one instance doesn't mean it's great in another. So you have forms anywhere from a short form, 1 page, maybe 5 to 20 different fields, all the way up to multi-page forms, a couple hundred fields, taking anywhere from 10 to 20 minutes to fill out. So there really is a wide range of forms and needs. And I really like this quote by Dan Gilbert from a TED Talk. It says, "At every age, people highly underestimate how much they will change in the next decade." As we're looking at InfoPath, we're looking at kind of a plan that details what's going to happen in this next decade. And that it's not necessarily a bad thing, but it's an opportunity to change and adapt and move to that next level. So not necessarily the death of InfoPath, but if you're gloom and doom, you can say that. But there's really going to be a long period of time, about a decade, before InfoPath really comes to a close. Here's kind of the details of when InfoPath is going away. I'm not going to read this entire slide, but that short answer is in the next decade. So over the next 10 years, some changes are going to happen, and they're going to come pretty slowly, so kind of helping people to make that transition onto different solution paths. And kind of that long answer is that there's going to be more steps and more things that are coming from Microsoft and some other things. And this is just our guesstimate, but I think it's a pretty good guesstimate as to where things are going. And if you're interested, this is from the Office blogs, and this is where they actually came out and said, you know, how long will InfoPath be supported? And they've said until April 2023. So there's still quite a bit of time for your InfoPath forms. There's no rush to get going on a different solution or migration path. I've included the link to this blog if you're interested in kind of reading a little bit more about the details of what's coming in the future. And then at the SharePoint conference that happened a couple of weeks ago, some of you might have known that went on, but they had a really great presentation on kind of the after InfoPath and what's coming and what's out there. And that link is also on this slide. I would definitely suggest checking it out if you're kind of wondering what is coming exactly from Microsoft and what they're saying about it. There's also a slide deck in this presentation that I suggest downloading kind of with the video. All right, so after InfoPath, the big question, where are we going? And this brings us to FormsViewer. Okay, so what is FormsViewer? It's a migration path. It's how you can take your forms and your InfoPath form specifically from that reliance on the Microsoft product and start letting them do something a little bit different. So it's community-based and an open source project. And it's really going to allow you to take those forms with a continuous improvement model and updates and things that are going to allow your forms to be flexible and still gain improvements and functionality as things adapt and change. And this is beneficial to you because it can help you maintain your current investment without making a huge change. Q rules is going to be supported, which some of you may know is kind of our codeless solutions built into your forms. And so that'll continue to grow and really excel the use of your forms. Easy to install SharePoint app, as you'll see from the demo. Very, very simple to follow and get working on your site right away. And really support for those document-centric eForms processes. All right, so this brings me to my demo. I'm going to switch screens here for a minute, and I'm actually going to start in the designer. And the reason I'm going to start in the designer is I really want to show you kind of the back end of what goes on in these forms, and maybe similar to some of your form design. But there's really a couple of key features that I want to highlight from the designer before I show you in preview, and then I'm going to show you from the browser and then show you from the app itself. So you'll see we have an expense report here. And what's something that's very functional in a form is creating a hide show section. So rather than having multiple views in your form, you can simply create one view and hide and show different sections based on what you want your user to see. So here we have our employee tab and our expense tab, and the different sections below. So you'll see the employee information and manager information and the expenses. So the view is actually a little bit more robust than creating two separate views. And you'll see those repeating sections as well. Most forms today, I would say 90% are going to have some sort of repeating section and repeating data. So it's important to include these sections for the ability to capture data. It really doesn't make a whole lot of sense to create an expense report and only have one expense per form. That ends up being lots and lots of forms for multiple trips. And so containing that data with repeating sections is very important. So we kept that functionality. Our drop-downs, which you see I have a couple of those, and those are being populated from our data sources. So we're pulling in external data from an XML resource as well as a SharePoint list. So that ability to create data tables that are easy to update and import right into your form. The submit functionality, so that your form is submitted right to your library. And then I have something kind of fun. We've created some dynamic labels. And so what happens with our dynamic labels is all of these labels that you see, the employee information, manager information, are all populated from some data and default values. So if we look at our default values here and our labels, we can see we have two different languages with a repeating structure. So that's where we're going to input those default values and how we're going to change those values. So now let's just preview the form right here from the designer. And just taking a minute to load. And there we are. Here is our form. So another kind of key piece is this auto-populating date. You can see that right away it pulls in today's date into that space right there. We can enter information into each field, fill out part of this form, and as I was showing you before, we can see that now just the employee and manager information are showing. If I click this expense tab, it's going to switch and show our expenses. So I can pull a category from this list, like so, enter an amount, and it's going to recalculate that value, which is very important. And also that kind of language structure I was talking about. So here's where we can change that language from our admin view with our dynamic labels. We have the expense report label currently. We're going to switch to pirate speak. Hope you all like some pirate speak. And we have our adventure details and treasure lost at sea. So just a fun or practical way to have dynamic labeling in your forms. If you need the ability to label something in a different language, it's a great way to do it, and the eForms viewer supports that. So I'm going to switch gears really quick and actually show you how quick and easy it is to deploy the app. All right, so here from our admin site, I'm going to go to our SharePoint site. I'm going to go to our admin section, back to SharePoint, and I'm going to go to our apps. If you haven't added a site collection for your apps, you're going to want to do so. But you can get to your app site collection here or from here. You're going to want to click App Catalog, and this is the point at which it will also prompt you to create that apps catalog. You're going to want apps for SharePoint. All right, and you can see this one already exists. I'm actually going to delete it right now, like so. All right, and now I'm going to add the app. So I'm going to browse to the location on my desktop. And right now it is a .app file, so you're going to want to click that file, make sure there's no other extension. There's more details to that in our deployment guide. And then we're going to want to upload. You can keep most of the settings that are on this next window. We can click Save. All right, just like that, you see that the app shows up in our apps for SharePoint. So now we're going to go back to our admin SharePoint site, and then back to our site collection. So this is where our app is going to be deployed. And we'll go to our site contents, add an app, and we'll see that the Forms Viewer is available right here. So we're going to click on the Forms Viewer and click Trust. And in just a few seconds, this app will be available for use. All right, and there it is. Shows up right in our available apps. Okay, now switching to where we submitted our expense report to earlier. I'm going to refresh here. Oh, I guess I didn't submit, but this would be where it would show up from that preview mode. I'm actually going to click this existing form, go to my Files option, and click on the Forms Viewer. So this is going to allow me to open the form in the Forms Viewer. And with the Forms Viewer, you have the ability to open an existing form or create a new form. So it really gives you different functionality. And so just like the controls that we saw in the preview mode, I can click right here and select my date. And you can see that it's auto-populated as well. I can insert my expense into that repeating section, which is really key in that expense report like I was talking about. I'm going to add another date, and you can see that that value is going to be recalculated. Our hide show sections are working properly, like so. And we can switch our form to those dynamic labels. Right here, just like before. And you can see all of those labels shift to that name. Now we're going to submit from the FormsViewer app. File submitted, so we've got that validation. And now we're going to go back to our library, and it should refresh and show that updated form. So quick and easy. And I'm also going to show you what happens with that kind of automatic update. So our departments list is a drop-down. I'm going to add a new item really quickly to it. I'm going to say shipmates, keeping with our pirate theme. And go back to our Forms Viewer. So now when I open in a new form or an existing form, that value will be updated. Like so. We can see shipmates right there in the drop-down. So that just gives you a little bit of background of all the different features that are still available with use in the FormsViewer app. All right, sorry about that. Back to our presentation. All right, so this is the FormsViewer App Overview, and this is also available on that Forms Quo website. It'll give you all of those more detailed options when you actually click on that matrix option, give you the benefits and limitations. So the benefits, you can take your current InfoPath forms and bring them right over to the app with some simple modifications. And there's going to be additional features and extensions for integrating with your SharePoint library, with your InfoPath Forms. So there's really going to be some extensive benefits to keeping those forms. Limitations, it's browser only, and not all features are currently supported. It's a beta product, so we're working on really updating the Forms Viewer and getting some more functionality built in, but it's going to be a process. And the customization theory is just that, some form features are not supported. So this is a detail of kind of those pre-beta support features that we were working on back when we were expecting that release and our announcement of InfoPath. And the platform that was supported is Office 365, and that was kind of an admin code deploy situation. Now our beta, March 2014, we have a few more controls built in, and we've really focused on that secondary data source functionality, rule validation, and secondary data source fields, and really those data connections as well. And we're working on a form load rule. And we're at the point where it's supported on Office 365 as an app. And looking to the future, our unveil. Version 1, shooting for June 2014 as our release date, with a few more controls, more rules, more data connections, so building in more of that functionality for our version 1 release, and support on Office 365 and SharePoint. All right, now that I've kind of reached the end of my presentation, I'd really like to open up the floor to any questions that anybody may have.
Well, thank you, Bree, for that wonderful demo. I've already responded to one of the questions from Tom, but let me just, for the benefit of the audience, I think I did privately, so I'm going to just respond to this one and then maybe you can get the next one. So the question from Tom is: FormsViewer strictly strictly supported in SharePoint? Only supported, I guess, in SharePoint 2013. And the answer, right now, we are focusing on 365, but we will be providing a SharePoint on-premise version that will work with Foundation or with SharePoint 2010 or with SharePoint 2007 eventually, and we'll have that out. I don't know if it'll be out in the June release, but sometime in the near future. Let's see, next question up then. Are on-site SharePoint deployments supported? So same kind of question from Daryl. Thank you, Daryl, for that question. We will be supporting on-site SharePoint deployments in the future. Right now, the beta doesn't support that, but we hope to have that ready sometime over the summer. And yeah, so no on-premise app yet. The app will work on-premise if you've configured SharePoint apps. So if you've got a 2013 on-premise, you're going to go up to our Forms Quo site. There's a download link. You can download the zip file. In the zip file, there's a .app as well as document, and you can, if you have, there's a little bit of extra work to configure the apps for on-premise. If you've done that already, Andres, then it will work for you. Brian's got a question: is there support for older versions of SharePoint? We use 2007. Yeah, I mean, we're in the process of figuring out what to do with V1 and V1.1. We're going to release a couple, basically every quarter we're going to try to target a release, and your feedback here is very important. So if you really care about 2007, then please let us know in the survey at the end here. There will be a survey popping up, and you can fill that out. We're also going to provide the package of what Bree presented, the presentation, the app, zip file, and everything as part of your goodies kit today if you fill out that survey. Olaf has a question. So we will still need InfoPath Designer to create the form. Yeah, exactly. So currently we don't have a designer product in development. We're working closely with Formotus, and Formotus, we presented a couple weeks ago, has a great solution for mobile apps, lots of rich controls. I encourage you to go out to our YouTube site and take a look at our demonstration from, I think it was the beginning of March, right before the SharePoint conference. Formotus is working on a designer, and we're working with them to support them on that. But for right now, I think that the InfoPath Designer will continue for many years, and I don't think there's as much of an urgency to replace that right now. And then let's see, Daryl, you had another question. If you have SharePoint 2013 Foundation deployed on-premise with the App Store up and running, yeah, then you can use the tool. And we haven't tested it, but you should be able to use the tool. And if you have any questions whatsoever, feel free to just email support@qdabra.com. We would love to hear from you. Like I said, this is a major effort for us this year. In addition, of course, to supporting all of our existing InfoPath solutions out there, we're going to continue to work with you to build those solutions. InfoPath is still a great prototyping tool. It is really the only tool in town right now that gives you XML support, codeless support for rules and smart form logic, and then the ability to connect to web services. So none of the migration options that Microsoft talked about really cover that space, and we would expect that InfoPath will continue to be the place to go for form creation, just because the cost is lower. So it's very easy to quickly create a form, publish it out there, and connect it to web services, and it's low cost to maintain because you don't have to change things. And then you can also just migrate your data. So the wonderful thing about InfoPath is the data is open. So unlike some of these other technologies, it's just XML data. It's open. It's going to be very easy for you to take that data and migrate it to whatever solution you choose to migrate to on the horizon. And thanks, Daryl, for your wonderful comment. And Bree, awesome job. And look forward to having everyone here next week. Next week, let's see, what are we talking about next week? Well, our After InfoPath series is kind of, we're trying to be a little flexible here. We get different ideas every week, and we're thinking, because we got so much feedback from you last week, that we should look at Word next week and talk about InfoPath to Word. We're working with ServeBus, another one of our partners, to demonstrate their solution, and we can either do theirs next week or Word. So depending on whether we get our demo scripts ready, we'll probably do InfoPath to Word option next week, but we may do ServeBus next week, and if we don't do ServeBus next week, we're going to focus on their technology the following week. And for those of you who don't know, ServeBus is one of the technologies in the matrix. They've got a nice technology for showing forms in the browser. They've got a great team in China. They're very, very quick and proficient at building this solution. We've been very impressed with what they've come up with, and we're going to show that, if not next week, the following week. But I hope everyone has a wonderful week, and we'll be putting this up on YouTube. Don't forget to fill out the survey. And Bree, thank you, and way to go.
Yeah, thank you everyone for joining us this morning.